So you're a Jamestown native.
Yes.
What did your mom and dad do?
Well, my mom was a homemaker. She raised the kids, and she also had a job at the Neisner's, the Big N.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad worked for my uncle, the Frewsburg Pharmacy. He was a drug clerk for about 20-some years, and then when they closed the pharmacy, my dad got a job at the post office and worked there for another 20-some years.
I'll be darned.
And retired. So.
Where does this affinity with the Cleveland Indians come from?
I think it was because my father was stationed in Cleveland when he was in the Navy, and I think that's where he picked up on it, and then he just kind of raised us to be Cleveland fans. So,
Was he a World War II guy?
yes.
What did he talk much about that at all?
No, not much. I know he had a bad scare when he's at a destroyer escort, and he was standing on the bridge, and he kind of fell backwards, and he would have fallen into the ocean, but some guy grabbed him and was able to pull him back. So that's all that I remember him saying anything about.
Wow,
Yeah.
that would be a meaningful moment.
Yeah, yeah.
So you are a Jamestown High School graduate. What year?
Yes, 1965, long time ago.
And 65. So were you in Clark's class then, Clark Papa?
Yes.
So you guys are the same vintage.
Yeah.
And then give me a little bit of your autobiography. What happens after you graduate from high school?
Well, I graduated in '69, and I got a job teaching at the St. James School, which was the school.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to JCC for 2 years. In fact, I played ball under Wyman Ansley,
Oh my gosh.
and then he turns around and he's on the council when I'm on the council. But I still have the tie tack that he gave us as a Christmas present, JCC '66. But then I went to Fredonia State, graduated in '69, and there were a lot of teaching jobs available, but I chose the Catholic school that I went to when I was a kid. So I taught there from '69 to '75, and then they closed the junior high where I taught. While I was there, I got the title of vice principal, and that's important because when they closed the school, Mrs. Rugg, Virginia Rugg, she's a neighbor, used to live around the corner from us. She says, I see you've had some administrative experience. Why don't you apply for the position at the Resource Center? It was the Director of Children's Services. And I said, all right, I will. And so I did, and I got the offer. And so I was director for 3 years, and then Mike created a position, media specialist, and that was a PR position. And so he asked if I would be interested and have to take it. I said, sure, I'm interested. So I was there until 1985.
And so during that time period, Virginia Rugg, my gosh, that's a name we haven't talked about yet. She was one of the originals.
Right.
And what did you know about her and even at the time known as the Achievement Center?
Well, I knew a lot because my uncle went there, my Uncle Busty Raffa, when it was on 3rd Street. It was called the Achievement Center.
Right.
It was just a small sheltered workshop, and he hung around with Patty Rugg. It's Mrs. Rugg's granddaughter. Like I say, they lived right around the corner from us. And so I got to know a little bit about the Achievement Center, which is what it was called then. And then the big explosion in the 70s and 80s.
So the Achievement Center at the time you would have started really was down here next to the old Jamestown Stamp, right?
Yes, yes.
And tell me we haven't had anybody really explain, how was it set up?
From what I remember, and it was quite a
Yeah.
while ago, I believe they had the truck light contract there, so it was small, hands-on assembly, and I think that was it. But as far as I remember,
Where was the administrative office? There as well? Everything was at on 3rd Street?
I believe so. I don't believe there was anything at Jones and Gifford at the time.
Because I remember going over there. I mean, I just have a memory early on when I got involved going to Third Street, and it was right next to the Jamestown Stamp Company, and the Patricks owned that, Todd ultimately, and Todd was a baseball card guy, so he he had a little niche of cards. Anyways, I digress. And so you're there for so you got a job description as kind of children's care, or I forget the term you used. And what was that role? What were you doing?
Well, at the time, there were three classes of children that were being taught by the ARC. Two of them were school-age kids, because at the time, the schools weren't able to handle the kids. And so our ARC was kind of like a BOCES, and they took the kids on, but they were school-age kids. And then there was one class that was 3 to 5-year-olds. Then there were 3 classes in Dunkirk, school-age kids, and one in Westfield. And so my position was to supervise the staff and to provide a tie-in with the home schools and with the homes and with the ARC.
Now, were the schools located right here on Third Street? Where did the kids go to?
The Jones and Gifford Avenue, there were classrooms there.
Okay.
For the Jamestown ones. And in Dunkirk, there were public schools. In Westfield, I think the Westfield one was at our Westfield Center.
Did you, were there programs, kind of the early intervention type programs?
Yes.
There were some at Bush and Euclid School? Do you remember?
Euclid was one, yes, I remember Euclid, yeah.
And the First United Methodist Church, too? Methodist Church?
Yeah, I can't recall that.
Yeah. I'm cheating here. I'm looking at something you don't have, that he put together. So during that time period, we've asked everybody, kind of what was the sense of, you explained to people you work for the Achievement Center, and they go, what? I'm sure. And then you explained you're helping at the time, mentally retarded was the term used. What was sort of the reaction in the community? Did you get a sense of that?
Well, that was in the early days when we were trying to open up group homes, and there was the old NIMBY atmosphere, great, but not around here. And Mike was a very smart individual. He knew the law, and he knew the saturation. You can't be saturated, and so he would always look around town for different places. And he was very good at talking to people, and he was very good at making them finally feel comfortable that these people weren't dangerous, that they would make good neighbors. And I think that was the key to his success. Very good relationship that he built with people.
So when you start in 1975, Virginia Rugg encourages you to apply. You go in and you meet this guy named Mike Raymond. What was your first impression?
He didn't have a tie on, and he's kind of laid back and was always smiling, and scruffy beard. And I says, hey, that's not like the nun that ran the school. And so I thought it would be a nice, comfortable place. So we hit it off really well. Yeah.
And Mike did, this is back in 75, and at the time, Mike started in 74. The Jamestown Achievement Center relocated to the Art Metal. Do you remember that decision to kind of go from 3rd Street to all of a sudden you're down in Jones and Gifford? That's a big leap.
Yeah, I don't remember what went into that decision making. Certainly wasn't a part of it, but I really couldn't comment.
Do you remember John Reel at all? He was the guy really who ran the building at Jones and Gifford. He was an employee of Walter Heller Company, which owned the building, but he had an office there and really worked very closely with Mike because he could see the vision of ultimately renting 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors, the back part of the building. I mean, eventually worked his way through that. But that was really John. He was a board member, but he really was permitted us, frankly, to buy that building.
Yeah, I remember the progression that took when they were expanding the sheltered workshop, and then the really big contract that they had with the Army for wooden tent stakes. That was a biggie.
So we get that, the concept of creating a manufacturing facility, which is like, whoa. We've gone from just doing stuff with Truck Light, that was one of the first ones, and then Worley Industries,
Yes, I remember that.
that was another
The
one.
Mucow,
Yeah, so you worked with Major League Baseball cups and things like that, you know. Then we're at Allied Industries and military contract. Were you, by that time, were you now into the media aspect of it, the public relations?
Yeah, I was, and part of that position was to videotape in-service workshops, and then use them to play back to new employees when they first came on, and also to videotape the sheltered workshop operation. And I remember how it expanded to, in fact, it was so huge, the contract, I don't know if I should be saying this, but sometimes it was difficult to meet the quota, and so Mike would ask staff people if they would work, and I said, yeah, sure, that'd be fun. So,
I remember the quota, it never asked me, but I remember the quota, you know, fear factor, because you did not want to lose that contract.
right.
So it was all hands on deck. And a lot of publicity. I mean, you specifically were intimately involved in raising the community's consciousness level on this particular unique contract.
Yeah, that was part of a newsletter that I put together. Mike got me a camera, built me a dark room. I went to JCC for a course in black and white photography, and then I was able to process and print my own pictures. And I got into the shelter workshop a lot, and was able to include that in the newsletter. That was where some of my sense of humor was exposed.
Well, do you have a title for your newsletter?
I think it was Filling the Gap.
Filling the gap.
Yeah.
So really, this was an effort, conscious effort by the board, Mike and you, to kind of get the word out on what the Achievement Center, I forget we'll use the term Resource Center, did. I mean, I think that was part of a very conscious effort.
Yeah. And I remember the decision to go to the term Resource Center as opposed to Chautauqua County Chapter, New York State Association for Retarded Children, which was so lengthy and also was inappropriate because these weren't retarded children that we were serving. Some were, but most of them weren't. So
Did you come in, was that your name, the Resource Center?
no. But it was a good name.
Yeah.
Actually, the Early Learning Center was something that I started when I was a director of Children's Services, and that name we got just through parent input. I don't know if they still call it the Early Learning Center.
Do you still have that? What's the Early Learning Center, is that still used?
No, we sold the Asheville building a long time ago, and then we were located in that Connections building, the old school.
In Ellery, yeah.
Town Line Road, but we've not been doing that for probably 15 years at least.
You still have a children's program?
No.
No? Oh, dear. Because the 3 to 5 was a big area that wasn't being served because the law didn't require the schools to do that. And then we even got a birth to 3 program started when I was a director.
We start going like crazy. Mike, using the incentive from the Willowbrook Decree, work with the state. You're part of that creating media, helping Mike write presentations. What was that like behind the curtain?
It was fun for me because I got to be creative, and I was able to pick Mike's brain, and gosh, all of the things that he did, the apartments, all of this vision that he had, apartments for the clients, the recreation center with the floor that, because some clients were apprehensive about deep water, you just stand there and then the floor would lower, and just brilliant. He even bought a greenhouse up off of Sweet Hill, I think it was Johnson Avenue, and
Johnson Florist, yeah.
plants and things, I think.
Plants and things, good memory.
Yeah. And I used to do a lot of photography up there. That was fun. But just the ideas that he came up with, I was able to put down in print and on paper, and that was, I think that's how we got along really well.
Well, it was hard, and I know my personal experience was I was the lawyer trying to walk in his shadow just to keep up, so, because he was at 10,000 feet,
Yes,
moving.
yes.
And then he had this next layer of guys like Piatz, Lombardo, Peterson, trying to keep us, filling in the gap, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
Because during that time period, such things that happened as the day treatment program,
Yes.
the first residential facilities in Dunkirk, at the Dew House on Washington Street. We moved the Dunkirk workshop from the Holy Cross Seminary, remember that
I
location?
remember that, sure. Yeah.
To the Loblaw store, I remember going out there for all that. And convincing announcing to the Holy Cross folks that we were leaving. I remember going specifically out there, and it was, I don't know who owned it at the time, if we had to talk to some Catholic priest, I'm not sure, but it wasn't quite, they wanted us there.
Yeah,
That didn't work for us.
yeah. Mary Andrews, was she was the
Mary
director?
Andrews, yep.
Director up there, yeah.
We haven't had anybody talk about Mary. What's your recollection of Mary?
She had a good head on her shoulders, too. She was always looking out for the clients up there because, as opposed to just the clients down here. She wanted to make sure that they got the same services offered to them. And,
Do you know what her background was?
no, I don't.
She a teacher? Then we got into like the advocacy program. We talked about the recreation program, psychiatric day treatment clinics. We had Governor Hugh Carey here,
I remember that.
yeah.
Yes.
And then Forest Avenue, Willow Avenue, Benedict Avenue, Willow Trace, Foot Avenue. I mean, pharmacies, dentists.
Dentists, yeah. I had my teeth worked on by the dentist.
And I was trying to think of the first dentist, but I think his first name was Pete, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
Masson. Peter Masson.
Yes. On Prendergast, was it? Yeah, it was on Prendergast.
And then you had, of course, the pharmacy.
Then the new administrative facility where Joe Caprino's used to be.
Yes.
I remember when they converted that over. That's when I had my first permanent office. I was always being shifted around on Jones and Gifford, wherever there was a space available. That was my office for the time. Then when they built they did all the renovations there. They did my office and the dark room right behind my office.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Now, of course, Mike had the ultimate office, King's office, and you had to work your way through Kay Neri to get to him.
Yes, yeah, great lady. I was really funny, too. That's why we got along so well. I did a paper for one of my courses, and it was on Civil War, and I had come across some letters from a soldier who lived in Arkwright and who wrote these letters to his wife, and they were at the Fenton Historic Society, so I took those, my major was history, so I took those letters and I transcribed them. The man was a notoriously bad speller, and so every word, what I did is I asked Kay if she would type up the thing, and I would dictate it into the machine, and every other word I had to say sick, because that's the way he spelled it versus,
Spelling incorrect.
yeah. And she used to joke, well, I'm not going to say this. I'll say this off the record.
Okay. Whatever you want, I mean, he's gonna edit it.
When she would come in the morning and she would see a nice-looking girl sitting there waiting. She says, Mike must have been out last night.
You're not the first to have mentioned that, by the way. I just want you to know, that's,
Yeah, well, we used to hang out together after work, too. In fact, we had the Bogarts
Yeah.
business.
well, while we're on Kay, who was the gatekeeper, and Kay had her own stories, some of which she kept to herself, some of which she shared. But she was very protective. Do you know anything about her background? I mean, how did Mike catch up with Kay?
She was there when I got there, so
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I know she was there before Mike, I mean, probably. Was Jim DePonso, was he there on the scene at the time you were there?
I remember Jim, yes.
Because it was Trowbridge,
Right. I
and then
remember
DePonso,
Trowbridge.
and then Mike.
Yeah. I had forgotten that DePonso was between the mics, but I remember Jim DePonso.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you're going th- all of this, and what happens in a normal process? You're saying, Mike, does Mike sit down with you and say, hey, Lou, we got to do such and such a piece on such and such? Or did you go see him looking for stuff? Did he come looking for you? How did it work?
He was pretty good, a pretty good source of ideas, and he would always, come to me and say, we got to do something with this and see what you can do with it, and so I would work on it and give it back to him.
His mind went 1,000 miles an hour.
Absolutely.
His background and we haven't talked about this either, but I think, didn't his brother have a developmental disability?
Well, he was in an auto accident, so he had traumatic
Trauma.
brain injury. And so I think that's, my own mind was what drove Mike,
Yeah.
was because of his brother.
Because he came with a passion, I mean, a serious passion right up front.
Yeah.
Did you ever go with him to Albany or anything like that? Did you tag along and part of that?
I don't recall going, no.
Yeah.
No.
When he was making pitches to the state?
But he was very good at securing the funds and for all those projects. Brilliant man.
You're the media guy, and as such, your goal is to get that word out through newspaper, radio, whatever the media sources are. How did you do that? How did you develop the relationships with even the paper and the radio stations?
Just personal contact as well, yeah. If there was a reporter at one of the meetings, I would strike up a conversation with them. But it was just personal contact.
Were you here when Mario Cuomo came here? Were you a media guy at the time? We had a big event at the city of Jamestown and something called Harrison Industries.
Yeah, I remember Harrison. I'm not sure. I was here when Mario visited the Cummins engine plant. I remember, but I don't know that I was here when he came to the.
It was 85, so it was right that time period, you may or may not have. So what were some of the challenges in your role as the media person vis-à-vis not only internally getting the story, but sometimes externally saying, the Resource Center, you're probably not worthy of the news. How do you build that up?
Well, it was helpful to have an uncle who was retired, okay? And so I would use that a lot, just as an example of, because he was very high functioning, even though he was mentally retarded. And the challenge was just to keep up with Mike, trying to take his ideas and putting them down on paper or putting them in print or in pictures, and that was quite a challenge, and I really didn't have the background that I probably should have had being in that position, but I kind of learned as I went along.
I bet you enhanced your writing skills.
Yes, I believe I did, yes.
Were you around when we decided to do that Jamestown Expos baseball season ticket sales? Remember that?
No.
Yeah. Remember Megan, no, Ann Farrell. Ann was one of Mike's assistants at the time. She was part of that, and who subsequently married Dr. Farrell, Pat Farrell. I can't even think what her maiden name was. Anyways, I digress. You saw so much in such a short period of time. Do you sit down occasionally and reflect, saying, that 10-year period, that snapshot, 74 to essentially 84, 75 to 85, Lou Lombardo was capturing probably the golden age of the Research Center?
Well, I knew it was exceptional times. They were exceptional times. I was just kind of wondering if it could continue, after Mike had left, because it was so good, and because there were so many things that he did provide. So I was a little concerned about that not happening, and I really lost track after that. So I don't know what was carried on and what wasn't.
Well, I'll just report briefly that, after Mike left, Sam Restivo, of course, was the interim for a period of time, and then Paul Shazana.
I remember Paul.
Paul
Yeah.
came back, and at one point, they had a budget of $100 million. That's a long ways from when you and I
Yes.
were part of that,
Yeah. I remember Paul when he was at Kay's retirement. I talked to him and I said, "You still trying to get by with that fake accent?"
What'd he say?
Yeah.
Now, he was there when you were there. I mean,
Yeah, he was a residential director, I believe, yeah. And then he left to go to Niagara Falls. And then when Mike left, he came back.
so in that staff level, who were the people that were sort of that, reported to Mike, grouping? I mean, who were those?
Joe DiCarlo, he was assistant director. Becky Bromagen. Tom McConnell, was it? McConnon, yeah, he had the workshop. And there was another fellow that did a lot of the group homes. I think his name was Tom as well. In fact, he left with Mike when Mike left.
Tisdale.
Tisdale, yes, yeah.
Tom Tisdale.
Yeah.
I've had the benefit of looking at this.
But those are the people that I remember.
Yeah. We were just talking yesterday about last time we saw Tom Tisdale was at Mike's funeral in Connecticut, when a bunch of us went out there, Kay Neri and Clark Poppleton and a few others. Have we heard from Tom since then at all? Has he surfaced?
Didn't he come to the service you arranged, the
You-
JCC? I think he was here for that.
You were here for the funeral service. We had a funeral service for Mike. I was one of the eulogists, and yeah, I think Tom did come
Other
to
than
the
that,
dinner.
no.
Track him down. Now there's a guy that's got a story. A story or two. And you got to know Mike, even on a personal level. How do you describe him? I mean, how do you, we knew he was a professional genius. I mean, it's almost a given. The guy was incredible. But, you got to know him on a personal side. What was the sense of him?
Pretty much the same, he got along well with other people. He was a good talker, a good listener, and he has some wild ideas, and he just laid everything out on the table, and he wasn't afraid to speak, and no idea was ridiculous to him. Yeah.
Give me your wildest idea that he had. Something you'd say, Greg, you can't believe he thought about this one.
Well, it had to do with the bar. It was
Was that-
opening up the bar.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it used to be called the Et Cetera,
yeah.
Et Cetera, Et Cetera. It was on Fluvanna in Washington, and then it closed down. A fellow from Fredonia had owned it. And,
Was George have it?
yeah,
George
George.
Privateer?
Yeah. And so we were talking one day, we were wondering, maybe we can get together in a business. And we used to go down at Et Cetera when it was open. So we went down there and we looked it over and we decided, let's give it a shot. So we completely renovated it. We added on a greenhouse type addition. And then later on, when I bought out Mike, I put a patio in the back. And we opened it up. And that was pretty wild for me, You should have heard my parents, Bring up a bar, but it was a professional bar, It wasn't just a,
And a different name, though.
yes, and he came up with Bogarts because that was one of his favorite actors, and we had playbills inside, and afterwards, after I bought him out, we did film festivals at the Palace, Bogart film festivals, and just to tie it in.
Wasn't there a screen in the parking lot? I mean, I'm having this,
There was, yes, yeah. And I think it was, might have been the used car lot that
yeah.
utilized it, yeah.
So did you show the film festival, was it in the,
No, it was at the Palace.
at the
Yeah,
Palace, okay, yeah.
Palace, yeah, I rented the films and played the movies, and then the ticket stub got you a free drink at Bogart's. Yeah.
There we go,
I had to get them down there,
yeah.
3rd Street to Washington.
How long did you have it?
I had it for 10 years,
You had it for 10 years.
yeah.
How long was Mike, was he partner of yours?
About a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Bogart, I'm glad, that's a memory, because I used to spend a few moments there, too. Sometimes it was easier to catch up with Mike at that, just to find him there, because he was
Yes. He
in his
was-
car doing something, he was gone. He was a hard guy to get a hold of.
Yeah, he was there a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so nighttime business meetings. Oh, yep. Yeah, so that was, but you got to, and then, of course, he just, left and then went to Connecticut. Did you stay in touch with him when he was in Connecticut?
No, I lost contact with him.
Yeah. Just an aside from Marty Idzik and my partner and I, on Friday afternoons, almost religiously, we would, about 2 or 3 o'clock, we needed a little caffeine, and we didn't have coffee, so we'd call Raymond. And I had his phone number, and he'd pick up. Hey, Greg, Mike, well, that one of those things was going on. And next thing you know, we'd get reminiscing, and he'd start laughing. And that, of course, is what we wanted.
That's,
His laugh is what was infectious.
yes,
I mean, I wouldn't even pretend to replicate it, but once he started, you were dead. I mean, we needed that. I mean, it was just sort of that guffaw. It was a good half-hour conversation, laughing most of the time, laughing at the laugh. You remember that?
oh, yeah. Laughing, and he smoked a lot, too. I mean,
Yeah.
Back when you could smoke in the offices and stuff.
Well, if you're driving in his car, which he often did, he'd pick me up and just say, get in the car. He's got a place to look at, got an idea. So that was, he'd just pick me up. No call. It would just kind of drive up and walk in the office and say, come on. Well, okay, like I have nothing to do. But his car, of course, was an episode because it had cans, smoke, and a cigarette tray full of stuff, and I think, was it Diet Coke or Coke? I forget, whatever.
Yeah, I think it was a diet drink that he drank in between
Yeah,
drinks, yeah.
yeah, during the day, yeah. But yeah, that was, yeah, what a car. So, Then at some point, you decide to move on. Was that a difficult thing to make, decision?
Yeah, it was, because I had made a lot of friends there, and I enjoyed it, the time that I had there. But they had hired somebody my last year there to be my supervisor, and my supervisor all the other times was Mike, and I would answer directly to him. But she was, she didn't like me, and so it made it a little more difficult for me to be there, and so I decided I left, and my brother-in-law, Dick Weimer,
Yep.
he got me a job as safety director at Blackstone.
Ah,
So I had to teach all the employees the new standards for chemicals. Back then, that was the big thing. So there were 1,000 employees, so I had to learn all about the chemicals and the material safety data sheets and everything, schedule all of the training sessions before they got to work, they got to work at 7 in the morning, so I had to be there before then just to do the workshops. And so I was there for a period of time, yeah. Then I got back into education and went through administration.
and found your way back to Rochester, or to Rochester.
Well, I left Jamestown in '93 to take a position as assistant principal at the BOCES in Geneseo.
Good.
And then from there, I was there 5 years, and then after 5 years, I was supervisor of special education with the BOCES up in Spencerport. Todd Eagle was
Todd, yeah.
he was the BOCES superintendent, and I got to meet. Of course, he interviewed me and everything. So, and then in '03, I retired from education and had gone to school for massage therapy. So I started a business in massage therapy, and I had that for 15 years.
My golly. You have a resume.
I had people ask me, why did you get into massage therapy? I says, well, when I was in education, I rubbed people the wrong way. I said I wanted to do the opposite.
When you were doing media work, did you interact much with some of the board of directors folks at all to get stories where, the Joe Caprinos of the world or any? Joe
No,
Trusso?
Joe is a distant cousin of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on my mom's side. Joe Trusso and I talked because, he was into politics, I was into politics, so
Right.
so we would talk a little. But it was about the only two that
Let's-
I...
While we have you, let's talk a little bit about your city council experiences. And was being in politics a normal thing for you? Was that something in high school? You were in the classes?
No, as a matter of fact, I wasn't involved until '73. They redistricted the area, the city, and they made 7 wards. There were 6. They made a 7th ward, and I happened to live in that. And I was very active in the school, St. James. And so Tony Raffa, who's another cousin of mine, half of the town is related, he says, why don't you run? And I says, I don't know anything about it, but if you help me. So he helped me, and so I ran, and I ran 10 times. I got elected 9 times, yeah.
So you were city council,
Yeah, council president for
right?
8 years.
And the mayor at the time was?
Stan was the mayor when I first got on, because I went to him to tell him I wanted to run for councilman, and he says, you got to talk to the Democratic committee. And so Stan was mayor, and then after him it was,
Steve Carlson?
I think then Steve came on, yeah. That's right, because we had to appoint Steve. The council appointed him when Stan moved on,
Yeah.
yeah.
So as council president during that time period, what were some of the issues, big issues that you had to confront?
Uh, Gosh, it's been so long.
Was it Brooklyn Square part of that? Was the Brooklyn Square demolition?
That was in 69, 70, around there, I think, because we had moved, when I first got married, we lived on Derby Street, and that was part of the, and then we were only there for a year, and then they tore down everything, so we had to move. So I think that was 69, 70.
So that predated you, you didn't get
Yeah.
involved in that.
Right.
City Hall, did you guys build City Hall at that time? Was that-
I believe so, yeah, because I remember the old City Hall, yeah.
Yeah. Was it pretty much a Democratic council? I mean, was there even an opposition at that point?
Mostly while I was on the council, it was controlled by the Democrats, yeah.
And who were some of the other members you remember, just without,
Jim Taminia was a very, very good friend of mine.
right?
He was on, of course, Wyoming came on, Joan Chevry, John Palladino, there was Gene Byrne, he's from Lakeview Avenue area. Todd Patrick was on, Jim Westman was on.
Those are the two Republicans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Dick Kimball came on.
And Dick, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I went through a lot of council people.
But it seemed like, again, I was just more of a young observer, but you were a young city council president.
20, yeah, well, I got elected when I was 25, that was my first term. And then, let's see, I was council president for 8 years, the last 8 years, so that would have been 8 minus 11 is, it was in the 80s when so I might have been 47, in my late 30s, early 40s.
What was the biggest challenge?
Well, one was the appointing Steve as appointing a mayor. That was a big challenge because there were 7 people that were interested.
Oh, is that right?
One was a maintenance man, just a plain old ordinary maintenance man. And he came, we interviewed all 7 of them. Tony was one, Tony Raff was one, and Steve. And so that was a big challenge.
Well, I heard, now that you mentioned those even 2 names, I mean, Tony and Steve were both players, if you will, in the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And it's always difficult when somebody who's put in as much time as certainly Tony had, to be able to have to weigh the pros and cons of that, because it really was though it was the city council had to say, it was really the Democratic Party had to say.
Plus distant cousin, you know. And
Yeah.
it was tough.
Yikes, yeah, it would have been tough. And you decided then get out of politics. Had you had enough?
Well, no, actually, I didn't decide. I was running my 10th term, and I said, this might be my last time. And so the people said, okay, so they voted for the other guy. But I didn't get out. I didn't make the decision that I was not going to run. So as it worked out, it was good because I was really tying myself to the area because of the council position, and I wasn't looking at my professional life. And once I was off the council, opportunities opened up, and so.
Well, your opportunities opened up on many fronts, certainly in the education part. And but as you reflect back on the 10 years you were at the Resource Center and with Michael, what did that mean to you personally and professionally? I mean, as creating skill sets and stuff.
Well, I really enjoyed it when I was there. Most of the time, I enjoyed it, and I felt that I was contributing to the community as well as to the population, and it was a very exciting time. It really was. Had to defend the Resource Center a lot when I was on the council, but I didn't have any problem with that. I just did. In fact, they opened up a group home up in my neighborhood behind Fletcher School.
Yeah.
My uncle went there until he passed away. Yeah. So,
Is that the same home that Anthony Caprino, didn't Joe's son go up that same?
I don't recall.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about defending it. What were some of the negatives about, on the Resource Center? Was it the fear of the unknown?
Yeah, it was definitely ignorance on the part of the people that didn't know anything about it, and that word retarded really scared them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of meetings to try to dispel all that and educate the people.
Right.
And that's another part of the job I liked, was educating people.
Well, and part of what you did so successfully is not only educate people that, one, they're good neighbors, two, the Resource Center is a huge economic engine.
Absolutely, yes. Big employer.
Yeah. And at the time, a taxpayer.
Was.
I mean, we were paying real estate taxes on the homes. That changed down the road, but at the time, we were paying that. So I remember things you put together were number of employees, payroll amount, good neighbors, and real estate taxes. I mean, you had those kind of bullet points, you'd say, oh, really? Wow. Because, you and I and Bruce and others, we had to go to the number of public hearings under the Padavin bill, and that was back to your point, Michael had to look around and see saturation. I mean, it's like it was a percentage game. Because there were some areas which were fairly close, but we had to work our way around. Just, literally had a matrix of where group homes were, and a lot of legal cases in your portfolio. You remember some of that?
Yeah. I remember people coming to council meetings, even though it wasn't a council decision, they would come to council meetings and express their opinions to the council.
So after you was it a little awkward for you? I mean, you're presiding. I mean, you're calling it, but at the same time, you've got family members that really they're talking about your family members.
Yeah. It was a sticky situation, but my father taught me to stick up for my principals and assistant principals and teachers.
Yeah. So the only thing that's missing in your life is a world championship for the Cleveland Indians.
I sat through the last two. Oh, man, very disappointed, 95 and 97.
I was, I tell you.
Oh, and the one in 2016, yeah.
Yeah. I tell your brother, I was in Miami in 97, when Jose Mesa came in.
Screwed up, yeah.
I don't want these guys to start sweating when I bring that name up, but we were, it was at the game. And you can't get any closer to ending the game when you got your ace, the guy that nobody hits.
Yeah, yep.
You're up by one.
Yeah.
And a Tony Fernandez error, which was unheard of. This is Gold Glove Tony Fernandez. Anyways, I didn't mean to go down that. Sorry. We were going to try to end on a high note.
Edgar Renteria who got that hit.
Yes, Renteria.
I remember.
You're awful generous, by the way, to my brother. He's always telling me how you pick up things and you just, Cleveland Indian things, and you just give them to him, and you won't take anything for it. That's very nice.
Well, no, well, he's, he's worthy first of all, deserve that, and I do see these things, and some stuff I had even in my own collection, it's after a while, nobody wants, or needs more than your brother, because he's got a museum of Cleveland Indian stuff beyond belief. I mean, he's got a car. I mean, if he were here, you'd walk out there and you'd see this.
Car is a big baseball. It's got the stitching around it and everything.
And it's always that way. I mean, he's hardcore. I mean, he and Sally,
Yeah,
they'll go down for a day and come back.
they have weekend packages, so does my sister and brother-in-law.
Yeah.
They have weekend packages they buy, and, they go on a Friday and stay through Sunday. The package includes Friday and Sunday, and then they would buy a ticket there while they were there off the street.
Yeah.
And last year was tough for them. It's really tough.
Well, he's been down, I think he's seen 4 games already. I mean, and so you get a chance to meet him today because there's no game in Cleveland.
Right? Probably.
Well, this has been great. Now, you drove in from Rochester today, and which we're
Tennessee,
thrilled.
yeah,
We're just thrilled
Tennessee.
you did this little. But as you're driving in and you're thinking, oh, what is Greg going to ask? And is there a question or two that I have not asked that you were anticipating? And I don't want you to leave here saying, oh, how come you didn't ask it?
No, to be honest with you, I was kind of wondering, but I thought I'd be prepared without having any cheat sheet or anything.
Well, yeah, I've got the cheat sheet. And
because I was a part of it and I enjoyed it. And so you always remember the things you enjoy. So I wasn't too afraid of the questions. Plus, I was in politics, you know?
Yeah, in the politics world, that's a whole different. This guy is a multitasking guy. Do you have any questions, Steve, in your media world of him?
You know, as you guys were talking about publicity for the Resource Center and the media, the name that popped in my head was Margaret Look. And I didn't know if Margaret was around when you were there.
She had in the Post-Journal?
Yeah, and she had worked at the Post-Journal. I think she was the first female news editor of a newspaper in the state of New York ever. But she has a son with a developmental disability, and I think in the early 60s, when TRC was just getting going, she and Jenny Vimmerstedt would make sure that there were a lot of articles in the Post-Journal about the Resource Center and the service we were providing. I think she was on TRC's board maybe in the mid-70s or so before moving out to Montana. So was just curious.
I remember the
timing
name.
was about right. So.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your Uncle Busty, great guy.
Yeah.
Probably was worked at the Resource Center, in the work center or janitorial crew longer than anybody else had. I'm sure he was there for more than 40 years. So,
Yeah.
a really sweet man.
Yeah.
Frida Eddy.
Frida, I remember Frida.
Yeah. She's just a lovely lady. And she had to have been there longer than anybody. I don't know if you ever put all the years together Frida did, but
I know she was a quote volunteer for first 8 years or so before she actually became a paid employee, and then was probably a paid employee 20, 25 years, and was not a young lady when she became a paid employee.
just a little bitty thing. But boy, just energy, when sometimes it wasn't easy to have energy. And just looking at some of the folks that, your life would have paths, with the Tony Ingrayos and the Joe Trussos and the Joe Caprinos, George Privateer. You may not remember this, but one of the early promotional things, George had another restaurant, aside from Et Cetera. It was on Flavanna Avenue. And he brought in on a weeknight the association.
Along Comes Mary.
Yes. Yeah. And
Never My Love.
and he had an event in his restaurant there for the benefit of the Resource Center. And it was George. And I'll never forget that. It was, they were just traveling. I mean, it was like a Tuesday night. So they were going from a Sunday night to a Wednesday night, and, essentially, for, pick a number, $500, $1,000, they played in this small place, maybe 50 people came, but it was a hoot. But that was George, 'cause he thought he'd make a buck. I think he lost a lot of bucks, is what he did.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But you remember George?
I remember George, yeah.
And he was on the board for a while. George was on the board. In fact, I think it was George and Mike got somehow access to the DeLorean.
Oh, really?
Do you remember that?
I remember Gloria, yeah.
So we had that auction, and at the Jamestown, it was at the Holiday Inn when they pulled the winner of the DeLorean. And I don't, but do you remember much about the background, what the sourcing of that DeLorean was?
That was before I came here. I didn't move to Jamestown till '89 and joined the Resource Center in '93, so it was before me.
But we had that, we bought it cheaper. I mean, he bought it, like, pick a number, $5,000, and we hoping to make 10 grand to offset it, which I think we did. But that was one of the crazier ones, because there weren't many DeLoreans
Right.
anyplace, and I'm not even sure they could start the car, but it was classy looking. Oh, yeah. That's Michael. And the houseboat, remember the houseboat?
Yeah, I remember the houseboat.
Did you guys ever do any staff work on the houseboat? Were you ever out on it?
I was out on it, but I don't think we did any work on it.
No retreats?
Yeah.
And Michael, were you ever the photographer for any of Michael's weddings?
No.
I was.
Yeah.
I was. When they had I'm just BSing now. And so when he was living at Dr. Spira's house, and he married,
Nancy? No.
no,
Is that
maybe been
Nancy?
Karen,
Luciano?
huh?
Luciano?
Yeah.
So he invited a few folks to this thing. I don't even know if I can't remember the time. Everything merges after a while. But we're all there and kind of dressed up, and my wife and everybody else. And Mike turns around and goes, "Anybody going to take pictures?" I mean, it's a wedding. And no photographer, nothing. He just had the bar. He was in good shape on the bar, but not on the wedding. So we stopped. They then had a reception. So while I got in my car and drove all the way home in Lakewood, because I'm the only guy that seemingly had a camera. And I came back and I took pictures of the wedding. I was the wedding photographer of Karen Luciano. Yeah, I forgot. And I don't know which wife that was, but it was in the pecking order, but
Yeah.
he had a few. This has been great.
Thanks for thinking of me.
Fill in the gap. We should have probably brought an example in the archives.
I could have. I was going back and looking at some.
Any other questions you have for?
No, you do a great job and cover everything anyway.
Well, he was a big athlete, St. James way back when, Baseball, serious baseball.
I played 10 games a week in softball. I was on every league except the women's league. They wouldn't let me in.
Did you play fast pitch?
The last year that it was here, I played, and then everything was modified in slow pitch. So I remember I got a hit off of Jim Adamsack.
That's a badge of honor, man.
Well, I'm a left-handed batter, and the ball went right over third base. That's how fast this guy was. I mean, he was really a fast pitcher. And it was a tournament, and I got a thrill out of that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's funny. I was just going to ask you about Adam Zach, because that's the king of the Hill. Fun to go watch him. If anybody could get a run off of him, and he played for Stravatos. He had a brother named Steve Adam Zach. He was also a good pitcher, but I mean, nothing like Jim. And they would play at Allen Park where I lived. I mean, I lived right on Allendale next to the park. And so whenever they played their game there in Allen Park, which was not the premier location, but whenever they played, the place was packed.
Yeah,
And then, of course, ultimately, they played at Bergman, and they had those Labor Day tournaments, and, you know, the lights were on till 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, and they'd keep playing double elimination.
yeah,
I mean, that was huge, huge stuff.
Yeah.
And Caesar House,
yeah.
who'd you play for?
Oh, how many teams? My favorite was Mickey Rats.
Career?
We used to go to B tournaments and win them. We won a couple in Sugar Grove, a couple in Warren. Talk about midnight. That's we played a game at midnight, and if we'd have lost it, we'd have had to play another game because it was
That down in Betts Field?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Luckily, we won it, but and so we got back down after midnight. But it would have been another game to play. So Mickey Rat, St. James, I was on for 25 years. Church League. I played a lot of teams.
I played, we had Westburg Elect, or not Westburg, that was Slow Pitch, but CMA.
Yeah,
And
Church.
I was the catcher there for many years. But we were loaded because we had Dewey Westerberg was our manager, and Dewey knew everybody. So you could have 3 people that were not
Right.
church members,
right.
and so he started with Kenny Martin.
Sure.
You know,
Good start.
good starters, right? So we had Kenny, and he brought in one of the Neubauer boys. He would never even knew how to spell church. And he was, Gary was our pitcher.
Gary, yeah, I remember Gary.
Yeah, and so between Kenny, and then we had Mark Thorpe, who was the young, you know, superstar baseball player, and his brother. So we were loaded. I mean, we did well. And, but it was Kenny Martin. I mean, the guy was the nicest, softest,
Oh, yeah,
but what a player.
yeah. Smooth. Nothing got by him. He just glide side
Yeah.
to side. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, gliding. So anything on the left side, man, he just, it was an out. Third baseman needed to hover third base, that's all.
Yeah, it's,
Don't let it go down between you and
Get
third
a-
base.
get out of my way, yeah.
Kenny will take care of the rest. Thank you so much for coming in. You
Thank
made
you.
an extraordinary effort to get here, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.